Hello, I'm Brandon. This is JT and Clark. And what we decided we wanted to do at Jefferson Avenue Baptist Church over the next few weeks is just tackle a practical issue of how to be a good neighbor in just a short 10-minute video exploring these questions. So today we wanted to ask the question, what does it mean to be a good neighbor to your church family when you can't be together? One of the things that we know is really important is that God has called us to be a community of believers. What do you guys think it means to be a community?
Well, I think that a big part of community is you are living life together, preaching the gospel to one another in your everyday life. We find ourselves in a peculiar time because we are spread out all over the city right now. And so what are ways that we can do that to one another from where we're at?
Yeah.
A community, another word you can use, is a family. What is a family for? It's used to love, support, encourage, challenge, and we are called to be in the family of God. So if we're going to be the church, it should be a natural part of our lives to be encouraging, to be checking in on one another. That's what it means to be the church, at least part of it.
I can see in this time it being one of those seasons where in our isolation, we tend to retreat into ourselves. And as we retreat into ourselves, I think one of the things that is really important is if we are going to be a good neighbor to our church family, then we need to be expressing grace regularly. So what in our current context we find ourselves in this season of being isolated from each other, what are some reasons that grace might be needed within the community of Christ?
Well, we all process our worldview differently, uniquely. So what I'm going through in my home is different than what you're going through in your home, or what you're going through in your home. And so when you have many people spread out all over the city, think very differently, especially in the context we find ourselves, we can either make that a tension point, or we can learn from one another and better understand our situation.
Yeah. The Proverbs talks about true humility is somebody who's willing to take correction. And the flip side of that is willing not to give correction, because when you say, oh, dogmatically, this is what you should do, let's just say for staying at home or whatever it may be right now, you're saying you're absolutely right, and you're kind of being prideful about that, which it's better to come with a humble attitude, like it says in Philippians 2. And at the end of the day, to do that, you need to always be looking out for other people's needs and not your own.
Yeah, I think that we just have a tendency to process other people's statements and their beliefs through our personal experience. And that's not a good filter to process things through, because you guys haven't been through what I've experienced, and I haven't been through what you've experienced. And so grace in those moments is saying, all right, like for example, I'm a little extroverted. So this idea of being isolated, it wears me out. And by the end of the day, I'm cranky and I'm tired simply because I'm craving some kind of social interaction. I'm a creature of habit and routine. And my routine is completely disrupted, and I am far less efficient right now. So if I'm experiencing this isolation in a negative way, I tend to lash out. I tend to be cranky. I tend to be short. And at the same time, I'm not personally, I am not waking up with anxiety about myself getting sick. And so, but just because I'm not wrestling with that doesn't mean that you aren't. And if we look at the news, it doesn't mean that your concerns aren't unfounded simply because I'm not experiencing the same level of anxiety. And so what do I need? I need to show you grace at how you're experiencing things differently than I am. And simultaneously, I might be a little glib and say something offhanded that could be really hurtful to you if you're having a higher level of anxiety as we go through this time than I am.
And ultimately, I mean, we want to be in this season, we are ambassadors of the gospel. So we want to be a beacon of hope in any scenario. And what I fear is that when we operate in our pride, we negatively impact our message. So when we are responding, and maybe it's a lash out, maybe it's a strong opinion, but anything that is going to come up abruptly prideful immediately makes me say, I'm not going to listen to you.
But not only that, isn't it disruptive to what we've been called to be as the body of Christ? I mean, we're called to lay down ourselves and serve others. We're called to achieve unity by expressing humility and selflessness. As a matter of fact, I mean, that's what it says in Ephesians chapter 4, verses 1 and following. It says, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, as a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you've been called, with what? It says, all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of spirit and the bond of peace. Now, what's interesting there is you can just flip every single one of those, and you can see how those sow discord and disunity. So whenever you're not patient with me for being insensitive about maybe some anxiety you're feeling, I'm sowing disunity, and I'm not being a good neighbor.
Right.
I think for me, it's when I do that negative thing, when I'm not patient or when I'm not understanding or not caring, it's because I've taken my eyes off of God.
Oh, yeah.
And when you take your eyes off of God, you forget how sinful you are and how gracious God is.
Right.
So if you want to be able to live in community, show grace, you have to look to God. And when you look to God, you will see your imperfections, and then you will see His love and how He cleansed you from that. And from there, that's how you can be in community, because you can show grace because you see it every day.
That's right. That's the well we draw from in order to show grace. It's not that we don't appeal to being a good person.
Yeah.
We actually appeal to our baseness, our depravity,
Right.
and the grace that Christ has shown us, so that we can show grace to others.
And I think that when we do that, it is a consistent reminder that as believers in a season of social distancing, in a season of isolation, in a season of gathering from our homes, our mission doesn't change.
Right.
The meaning of the church being together doesn't change. Being in community doesn't change. We need each other. And
I think we just now have to be a lot more intentional.
yeah.
And at the same time, what tends to happen there, because it does require intentionality, I think that in this season of not being together, we are all right now focused on, I mean, it's human nature. What can I do to make sure my family's needs are met? What can I do to make sure that I've established a sense of normal in my family? How do I develop new routines for what I have to deal with? Now, what did I just say in like 3 times there? I. It's all me focused. So now every single person is doing that, which means where's our attention as we're trying to balance?
It's on self.
It's totally on self. Now, all right, here's Clark over here, and he's feeling really lonely and isolated. And here I am over here, and I'm worried about myself.
Right.
Now, grace is going to show up in 2 ways there, right? One, I have to look beyond myself, get outside myself, and look to the needs of others. And Clark, if you feel cheated or left out because I'm not meeting your need, this is a season where, for the spirit of unity, I would hope you wouldn't harbor bitterness, but that we could live in peace with each other. Because as much as this is a season of everything is new, it's also an opportunity for us to slide into selfishness.
Yes.
I like what Clark said earlier as far as operating with intentionality, because what I think happens is in a me-centered focus, we sit here and we wait. When are they going to come to me?
When will my needs be fulfilled?
When will community come to me in this season? And so instead, we need a paradigm shift where we think, how do we intentionally press into community in this time? So if I find myself feeling lonely and isolated, I need to think, I need to reach out to Brandon. I need to reach out to Clark. I need to just check and see how we're doing.
Well, let's go down some practical ways. What's some ways we can reach out to our brothers and sisters in Christ?
I think one thing you can immediately do is just make a phone call or a text. I know that the church office for our Jefferson Avenue friends and family would love to provide a list of names if that's something you want to do. I mean, could you just imagine just making 3 phone calls a day? 3 phone calls a day to people you know, just to connect with them for 5 to 10 minutes. So think about your commute that you're going to redeem. So in Springfield, you can't drive anywhere without taking 20 minutes. So the fact that you have to drive to work or come home from work, you just redeemed 40 minutes of your day. I mean, what a great opportunity to just spend 10 minutes on the phone with 3 different people to make somebody feel valued and important.
Well, and I'm someone that I hate the idea of social media taking away from personal interaction.
Yeah.
But in this season, we can use social media as a tool to stay connected. So to interact with one another, you have a reservoir of different contacts already built into your social media. And so to even get on and think, man, I haven't seen this church member in 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And my main interactions with them may be on Sunday morning. Maybe I just shoot them a message and see how they're doing and how their family's doing in this time. Maybe ask them, how can I pray for your family during this time? And I think you'll be encouraged by the way that those relationships can actually strengthen and grow during the season as we're going through something pretty big together.
Yeah.
So we got communication. That's huge.
Mm-hmm.
What other needs can we meet as neighbors?
Well, I would say that prayer doesn't only occur in the four walls of church, and we already know that, but sometimes we forget who we need to be praying for.
Right.
So, I mean, if you are in a life group, it's just a perfect opportunity to pray for other members in your life. You just pick one a day.
Right.
And if we're talking 30 days where we're supposed to stay home, most of our life groups don't even have 30 people in them. So you can just pray for one person a day.
Well, and I think that brings up a good point, because I think in this season, when we gather together on Sundays, we immediately are around all of each other all at once in one place. And I think that when we're apart, we may feel this pressure to go and tackle all 300 relationships all at once.
Right.
But it's a good reminder that start small, be consistent, be intentional. So whether that's starting with a life group list, whether that's starting with a list of anyone from our community,
Right.
but going through and making intentional touches, praying for them intentionally, and making that a part of your everyday routine.
So at the end of the day, what we're saying is part of how we are a good neighbor when we can't be together is showing each other grace and living the grace that we've experienced from Christ. Understanding that everybody is going through something awkward and a change right now.
Right.
And so when we feel a need, it's our time to meet a need.
Right.
So we want to make sure we're taking that time to reach out, and that we have the opportunity also to be praying. So we just want to take a few minutes today to share with you a couple ideas of how we can be good neighbors even when we can't be together. So if this video was helpful to you, or you have any other tips or ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. I know other people would benefit from that as well. Thanks for taking a few minutes to be with us today.